This is Two Blokes Talking Electric Cars with Trevor Long and Stephen Fennick. Thanks to NRMA Insurance and Uniden.
And we appreciate you joining us here on Two Blokes Talking Electric Cars. Thanks to the good people at NRMA Insurance, helping Australians protect what matters most. 100 years they've been doing that. And of course, they are one of Australia's largest insurers of electric vehicles. And of course, thanks to Uniden Smart Dash Cams. If you have a car, why do you not have a dash cam? It's that peace of mind.
Protect
it's that
your investment.
What did I just see happen in front of me? Or
behind me.
This is what happened to me. Trust me.
Yeah.
That's how you...
I can speak from experience with this one.
Stephen certainly can. So we appreciate you listening. We appreciate your support. We do it all thanks to NRMA Insurance. And it's a big week for NRMA Insurance because they have released the second part of their Changing Gears report, which we have here in front of us. This is their look into the EV world here in Australia. Now, the NRMA Insurance report that electric cars account for 1.5% of the cars they insure, but there's an expectation that in about 5 years, that'll rise to 9%. Likewise, in this report, we find that the CSIRO says they have confidence in their forecast that from about 2050, the majority of the cars on our roads will be electric. So this is all about forward thinking. We told you last year about NRMA Insurance's Changing Gears report, which looked into some of the perceptions around EVs, the considerations of potential buyers and more. But there's much more to unpack about what an electric future actually means, which is why the second part of the NRMA Insurance's Changing Gears report has been released. And to discuss it, we are joined by NRMA Insurance CEO Julie Batch, and she's on the line. G'day, Julie. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, it's good to be back again.
We appreciate you joining us, and it's been a very busy few weeks for you and your team at NRMA Insurance with everything that's going on in New South Wales. So we appreciate you literally changing gears for us for a few minutes to talk about this report. So thanks for your time. This second report, when I look through it, I feel like it's far more kind of forward thinking, looking at the whole EV landscape, because even at the current rate, we're going to need a kind of a whole industry change to support electric vehicles. That's what I took out of it.
I think that's right. With the first report that we put out there, it was kind of just really laying the groundwork for what we're observing in EVs, the take-ups, and the kind of early stage questions we're getting from drivers. I think we've had the opportunity now to take a deeper look and say, what does the future look like? EVs are here. Some people love them, your listeners more than others. But, you know, they're here. And what do we need to do, to your point, across the whole system, just to give people confidence and comfort that when they're making this change in the way they drive, that they're supported over the life cycle of that vehicle. So we've really tried to dig into some of those questions we've been asked.
Julie, part of the report looks at the need, sort of calling for training within the repair and maintenance industry to support the growing number of EVs on the road. It's not something we hear a lot about, though, is it?
No, not really. And I think when you look at the motor vehicle repair industry, we really are skilled workers. And over the last number of years, with declining TAFE rates and things like that, there are less people moving into motor trades than there were before. Mm-hmm. But there's a greater need for them than there's ever been. So when we look nationally, there's something like 38,000 unfilled automotive positions right now.
Wow.
When you take a look at EVs and what's required, so those core mechanical skills and, panel beater skills, they're still really, really important. The EVs also have panels and things like that need to be repaired. But there is a shift. There is much more technology in EVs than there are in combustible engine vehicles. And so repairers need to be able to invest in that kind of specific tools and training to keep up. So software development, there's ADAS, calibration that needs to happen, and just really having a different understanding of what it takes to repair a vehicle with much more technology in it. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to bring a bit more awareness at NRMA Insurance. Our partners, they're already upgrading equipment. We're putting EV-specific training across our network. We just want to make sure that our customers that choose to drive EVs know that we've got the right repair skills and support systems in place to keep them on the road.
It feels like you've got strong partnerships in that sense too. I was at an event a few months ago where you were on the panel, and I think it was John Bright from Bosch was also on that panel. And it was kind of fascinating to me to think that there's a company, I mean, I don't know what Bosch do, but, you know, there's a company that is literally providing, because it's a back-end service, it's not something that everyday Aussies are interacting with. They're providing the gear, the equipment, the software, the training. I guess the average owner doesn't think about what's needed in that mechanics workshop, let alone a repair workshop for a different style of car.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. You're sort of bringing two trades together, the electrician in some ways and the motor repairer, the traditional motor repairer, and you're kind of blending those skills, which I actually think is pretty exciting for that industry. I mean, Bosch do a wonderful job. We sort of refer to some of John's work in the report, so I'd encourage people to take a look at that. But even just, you know, from my own point of view, I was driving to work the other day. I pulled over to get a coffee, and there was a little shop set up outside an electrician's shop, an electrical supply shop, just around batteries and battery health and battery care. And I was talking to the guy saying, why don't you push that into, motor vehicle repair shops and just kind of extend that opportunity? So I think it's pretty exciting. Lots of industries getting to work together and to think differently about what we need to create a future, I guess.
Well, speaking of batteries, I see one of the other interesting parts of the workshop experience, of course, is diagnostics. And the report even highlights, this latest report, that 79% of Australians think there should be a way to monitor and test EV battery health. Is that part of the future as well?
I think so, and we recommend that as being a key need in the first report and now. I mean, when you're switching an engine, we have a really good understanding around the life cycle of combustible engine vehicles. We kind of know how long they last. We know, how the engine performs over time. And the most important thing when you're replacing that with a battery-operated vehicle is giving people that confidence that their battery is going to be there for the life of the car. And that's in two ways. So the first one, most importantly, is that the battery has enough power to get them where they want to go. And then the second one is to know that when they're, as the vehicle ages, which they're starting to now, it's still pretty new, it's still pretty new technology, but they're starting to age. So over the life of that vehicle, how do you give people confidence on, the battery health and how long the battery is going to last? And, frankly, Trevor and Stephen, that we still don't know how long these batteries have got a long life. We still don't know the answer to that question. That's a good thing. We're not seeing the signs of, the battery decay at this point, but we need to give people confidence around that, and we want to make sure, our recommendation is that regular checks are done over time so people get a better understanding.
And making that equipment available, which is something that in my conversation with Bosch at that event, that's kind of one of the things they're working on, is having that technology so that a workshop and a repairer can make that assessment of a battery. And I think that we've talked about it a lot here, honestly, on this show. We had a super nerd come on recently talking about what battery health percentages actually meant. And it was frankly mind-blowing to us that 70% was a bad number. But anyway, that's something to unpack another day. Yeah. But we firmly believe that, in the second-hand market, for example, there should be clear listings of battery health in some way. But we need a uniform way of doing that. So that, again, is the industry working together. Just switch now to talk about sustainability, because obviously for some people it's a buzzword, but for some people it's a commitment, it's a challenge, and it's a reason to be better as a corporate entity. And again, looking at your report here, you talk about NRMA Insurance recognise the importance of sustainability and having commenced the transition of your corporate fleet to hybrid and electric vehicles. But there's something noticeable in the latest report, which is a big gap between the desire to achieve sustainability by the average person and their willingness to actually pay for that. Do you think that's an issue for the overall EV market?
I still think there are some misconceptions about the cost of ownership. That comes in a number of ways. So it comes in, the value of the vehicle once you put it on the road. Yep. It comes in the space around how much it's actually going to repair, cost to repair. So there's concerns around the repair costs or the servicing costs of those vehicles. And then there are genuine concerns around what happens to the EV at the end of its life, or maybe not even at the end of its life, but the end of that person's ownership. So there's still not a strong, as we've talked before, a strong second-hand market that will emerge. And we still don't quite yet know how long these cars and the batteries will last. We're expecting years and years. We're up to a decade with some vehicles already. And so what this report steps through is costs of ownership, the emissions, the savings on fuel and maintenance. And we would generally say that, based on our research and Transport New South Wales's data, it's up to 40% lower and cheaper to maintain these vehicles than petrol vehicles.
Wow.
Julia, I can remember the first report. There was a call for almost an education of potential drivers to learn more about EVs and what's involved, and obviously also dispelling a few myths. I see this time around there's some serious mentions of concerns, like serious concerns over battery fires, and we've spoken about this on the show a fair bit. It's a real negative for the industry, but still, the facts don't really support the fears, do they?
They don't. That said, it's the number one question that we get and the number one criticism, I might say. And maybe I'll just explain a little bit around EV batteries. So when insurers look at what we call frequency, and I'm going to get super nerdy with you here, guys, but when we look at frequency, we say, what is the rate of fires occurring in EVs over the number of EVs on the road?
Of course.
There's still 300,000 EVs on the road, but we look at how many fires are there in those cars as a percentage of the number of EVs on the road. And we compare that to how many fires do we see happen in combustible engine vehicles over the number of combustible engine vehicles on the road. When we look at those statistics, so the rate for the type of car it is, we don't see a huge difference. So there's a lot of narrative out there that EVs catch on fire. A couple of them do, but many combustible engine vehicles do. But the rate of fires is not different. There is a little bit more severity. So when a battery catches on fire, as people know, battery burns, and there are different techniques to put those battery fires out. So we see when the battery starts to burn, more total losses, but not more fires in the first place.
We spoke to Emma Sutcliffe, sorry to interrupt, from EV Fire Safe 6 or so months ago, and that was exactly what we got from her. But it's fascinating what you say there about the impact of the fire, because if your car is garaged and there's a fire, that's actually a bigger thing for your business, isn't it? Because you might be insuring the home as well. So that's really the biggest measure that you need to do. But for me, and I think for us, the challenge that this debate has is it just always shows up in the comments on social media. And I feel like as an industry, that's what we need to work through, is that myth-busting side of things. But, it's still a key point, and I think that's why you're doing this research, isn't it, to try and help dispel that myth?
It is. And so, certainly reading those comments there's a lot of valid points there, but I think people get a little bit confused when they hear battery fires. We see more battery fires with lower quality batteries that are aging in things like vacuum cleaners, or tools, or scooters and e-bikes, where those batteries are not high quality batteries like they are in cars. Fires in garages is not something from vehicles. It's not something we've observed.
Wow. So thinking about education then, and I think education, and again we bang on about a lot, it's kind of critical to the overall growing of the market. If we're going to grow this market, we need education. But there's also a lot of conversation about government incentives. And I do think this is a wavering topic for a lot of people. Some people just want all in. Government should fund it. And Stephen and I were talking before we got you on the line. The survey talks about 98% in Norway.
89% of EV ownership in Norway.
Crazy numbers like that. Yeah. But that's all government incentive driven. So, I feel like we're getting a diminishing involvement from the government here. Is this where, as an industry, we need to be working not just on education, but with government on those incentives if we are hoping to achieve these growth goals?
Yeah, I think it's important when the system is changing that the whole system works together. We've definitely seen, a big uptick in plug-in hybrid electric vehicle sales due to the fringe benefits tax exemption.
Yep.
That unfortunately ended on the 1st of April 25. So we're hoping that, as the government's been voted back in, they've been pretty vocal so far over the last few years about the importance of an electric future. So we look forward to engaging on that. I think to your point around education, when things change, education's everything. It doesn't matter what the topic is. So to move fear away, you need to inform people and enlighten them. That's been the case forever. And the more that we can do across the whole system, so that's people like, the two of you, through NRMA Insurance, through Bosch, just sharing our insights and what we observe, EVs will transition and we will have, close to full adoption by 2050 in our view. And whatever we can do to support customers get there, feel safe and secure, that's what we're here for. And hence putting reports out like this at this time.
But there's still some work to be done, and as the saying goes, it takes a village to get this happening, and we need the entire industry, don't we, across all stakeholders to be working together on all these things, don't we?
We absolutely do. That said, the industry, the ecosystem kind of emerges over time. So you start with the OEMs and the development. You need then the batteries. You need the people that are insuring it. Then people start repairing them when they go wrong. Then you need the secondhand market. So this industry emerges, but there's a lot that we can learn from other industries, new technologies, and new development. And just as we get more mature and more knowledge, just encouraging everybody to share their insights so that we can kind of bring that whole thing together and give customers a really good understanding when they buy an EV, what that means for them for the next sort of 10, 20 years.
I look at a report like this and I feel like this is a sign that NRMA Insurance is taking a leadership position in that transition, or is it just really a public exposure to the work that you are doing internally? Because I think as a business, obviously you're the CEO of one of Australia's largest insurers. You need to be thinking about what's happening in 10 and 20 years. Is this just a public display of the work that you would normally do, or do you see it as a leadership role?
I think it's both. So whenever we have insight and information, our organisation has always shared that, whether that's around road safety, accidents on the road, car safety and vehicle safety ratings. We've always been a part of that story. We have a research centre, a motor vehicle research centre that has always leaned into making sure customers are shared, information is shared and customers are informed. This is a little bit different. Because of our brands, we've had quite a lot of inquiry from EV owners wanting to buy insurance from us. We guarantee all our repairs, and so they know that when they're bringing their vehicle to us that we'll take care of them. And we really do want to support a transition to a more sustainable future. It's a big part about what our organisation is about. And so taking a leading position here, like we hope we are, in an early stage when, there's still a lot of misinformation out there, we think that's very important and that it's our role and responsibility to do that for Australians.
I heard you just talking about repairs just then. I think when people buy EVs, myself and Trevor included, the last thing you think about is a repair because you think, I've got this great flash new EV. But then when something happens, the disappointment is that you need to find the right repairers for your vehicle. And so you mentioned earlier how having the repairer network, and you obviously support cars being repaired at the right places. That plays a lot into people deciding on who's the best insurer for their EV.
Yeah.
Well, we hope so. I mean, that is our job, right? We pay out total losses sometimes, but most of the time what we're actually doing is fixing people's cars. And so therefore it is our responsibility to share with our customers where they can get their cars repaired very well. We still think that EV models save $300 to $400 a year just on maintenance. And if we train all of our people and our repairers to do a great job for our customers. We hope they'll keep coming back and insuring with us, of course.
Is that still a challenge? Is the challenge the same with obtaining an EV customer as it is for a traditional petrol or diesel customer? Or have you noticed that there's actually a different funnel for those buyers? Because I feel like EV owners still today are at a heightened research level. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they spend a touch longer researching their car. So is it possible they spend the same amount of time researching the ancillary parts of that, like insurance?
I think yes to both. So with a slight shift that we've noticed more recently. So first of all, the early take-up of EVs was those environmentally conscious people, technology-focused individuals that wanted to own a new technology early and support a green transition. And also the cost of ownership was pretty high. So as you know, new EVs were extremely expensive. Yeah. What we've seen more recently, over the last year, really, probably are a lot more still incredibly fantastic pieces of tech and cars come into the market, but at a much lower price point. And I think that's opened the market up to different people, still very much researching and so on. And a lot of the information that vehicles are sold differently, there's lots of information online, but we see it becoming a much more accessible type of driving. That's a good thing. And we're seeing the growth of a number of new manufacturers that weren't there 12 months ago.
This is obviously the second part of this report. Do you continue this work over the years ahead? Obviously, internally you do, but I feel like this leadership position is a strong one. So is it something that you're keen to continue that and potentially touching base on the things that we learnt in the first one and see the changes and evolution in that?
Yeah, we absolutely will. So this is two part. This report was in two parts. So this is the second part, but there's still so much that we don't know. So I'm really keen that we try to explore what happens to vehicles as they change hands. So that second-hand market, I think we've got a responsibility to customers to do that. And also, there's a lot we still don't know about the end of life. We know how long combustible engine vehicles last and how roadworthy they remain. And we've still got a long way to go to be able to teach customers around the life cycle of an EV. And I think that's a really exciting place to be. And we look forward to contributing whatever we can to that conversation.
So you're saying this could be a trilogy, this report. Might get a third one, I'm hoping, if it's a trilogy. But
just be careful, he's a Star Wars fan. He's gonna want prequels and everything.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. But
I'm hearing my team in the background saying, stop talking. But I absolutely think that's our responsibility, and it's a place that we want to be as NRMA Insurance is leading the charge here. More
work for your staff, I think, with the added research. But you know what? If the EV industry seems to be moving in the right way, would you agree with that? It is moving in the right direction. More people are getting more confident to buy an EV. You mentioned affordability. So I think the rising tide is going to lift all the boats here.
I think so. More confidence, more accessibility, more availability, different options, and a better understanding of the life cycle and what the car costs to run puts us in a great place.
Just finally, from a public perception point of view, you often drive past a authorised repair centre or something like that, and it'll have, an insurance company's brand on it. Do you see a time where you actually promote, in a sense, when a repairer or a trade has been trained and equipped with the right material? Do you kind of give them a badge that says, we're ready for your EV, or is that just something that, it should be assumed that if you're an NRMA authorised repairer, you're going to be able to handle that EV?
I think that's a great question, and let me take that on notice. What's coming into my mind is maybe we should just put a charging station out the front and answer that question. But
that's a very public way of doing it. Talk to your friends at Motoring and Services and have them expand their network.
We'll
Julie,
do that.
it's a comprehensive report. When paired together, the part one and part two, it shows it's a great amount of data. I think politicians should be reading this, let alone the average public. We'll make the report available as we did with the first version, first part on our websites, and we'll share it with our readers as they need and want. But congratulations to you and your team on the report, because it's comprehensive and it's fascinating to have that data, and it's a good marker in the sand, a line in the sand for the future of EVs as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, both of you.
You winding up to something? There it is, Stephen Fennick with his great wind-up. That'll be your famous wind-up, we'll call it now. Great to have the CEO of NRMA Insurance on. And honestly, we should say, Julie didn't have to do that, given everything that's going on with NRMA Insurance, with the insurance industry
the world's
generally.
Busiest CEO right now, after all the things that have been happening.
She was telling us before we got her on the line all the things she's done this week, and it's like she's essentially done a year's worth of work in 1 week. So
incredible.
Having to get her head around this report
as well,
is huge. And
big thanks to her.
It's very comprehensive. And by the way, this is not just NRMA talking to their customers. This is an Ipsos report, which they're a huge company that does these kind of surveys and studies. So over the course of, now it's been a year, and probably a year and a half they've been working on this. But I genuinely believe that this is what the EV industry needs. Now, no disrespect to her name's Julie, also the new head of the Australian EV Council. We'll get her on the show soon. Julie Delvecchio. I met with her. She's very, very lovely, new into the job, so keen to chat when she gets her feet under the desk. But they do lobbying and things, but I feel like this is the kind of work they need to be doing as well. The challenge is this is an expensive exercise, right? Yeah. Now, a company like NRMA Insurance can afford to do this because it's actually for their business, as I said. Of course, you've got to project, if you're going to project your income and your revenue and your costs and all that over 10 years, you need to know how the market's going to change and the issues and things like that.
Oh, they've done their homework. This report's comprehensive. Yeah, and I think you mentioned a good point where politicians should be reading this. Yeah. So for them to get their head around the industry and where it's going, but also it does address some of those pain points, not just in the myths, which is kind of we've dealt with, but also to the size of the market, but also the second-hand market and having battery testing and having some sort of consistency where if you're looking for a second-hand car, there should be, and we've said this last time, you should have a standardised test to say, here's what it is.
I think it's actually a real passion point for Julie as well, as the CEO of NRMA Insurance, because obviously they look at the market second-hand and new. But when I was at that panel where she was, I remember them having a long conversation about the second-hand market. Now, part of that is because actually EVs are being held onto for longer. But as I've said on this show many times, I think we're going to hit this point in the next 18 months where all these novated lease cars are going to go on the market again because people are going to get a new lease or whatever. Yeah. But it's a really important thing to be looking at because it's going to help dispel myths. Because the more cars that we have over a long period of time, we're going to learn about battery health, battery life, range changes, stuff like that.
Still pretty... The EV industry is still in its infancy. We haven't really. There's not enough data to really project further than 5 or 6 years at the bulk of the data.
It's very hard. And there is a part, and it's obviously a recent thing. There's a part in here where they even talk about Trump's tariffs because the positives and negatives of that for Australia are there plain to see because obviously there's going to be an influx of Chinese vehicles which are not going to make it to America. So that might be positive for us. But what impact does that have on the second-hand market and things like that? Yeah,
exactly. So does it dilute the market? Like we've seen all these brands pouring in. It's going to be more competitive for brands. They're going to really have to have a really good product to sell, given so much choice. But I think it's moving in the right direction. I think it's exciting that a big company the size of NRMA Insurance is right behind it and really passionate about having protection and proper insurance coverage for their customers. Repair as well. Remember I said repair's the last thing you think of when you're going to get an EV. But when it comes down to when you think, oh my God, do I have my choice of repairer? Is this repairer? Do they know what they're doing? So all those little nitpicky details are very important.
But isn't that a value add? Like if you're new to this and you're weighing up insurers, and again they're a sponsor, but I'm just talking about generally here. If you're weighing up insurers, I don't think I've heard from any other car insurance company through press release or marketing that they're even looking at how EVs are repaired. Yeah. So I think that gives you great confidence in a company to know that they're not only not just doing surveys, they're actually making sure that their repairers are trained.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. If you were, as you said, a lot of people put a lot of research into buying their EVs. And of course, when you get an EV, you need to have it registered, insured. So if there is upfront, if you're choosing between insurers, price is one aspect you look at, but the other aspect is, do they support? Are they right behind EV owners? Do they have all the right things we need?
Have they got my back?
Yeah, that's I think that could be a deciding factor for some customers.
I don't think Julie wanted to put a sign on every repairer.
Maybe not.
I feel like that
but
random.
You mentioned a charger at the front.
But again,
would sort of say, hey, we're open to EVs.
That's a smart way of saying we're ready for you.
We are EV ready.
Here's the thing. Think about that idea right alone. I went from sign and she went, hang on, what if we put let's just say it was a wall-style charger, not a full NRMA motoring services one. But as you drop your car off for repair or you go to pick it up and you see that that's there, it's likely also that they charge the car
Charge it for you, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly right, yeah.
People have range anxiety all the time, and especially if you've not had your car for a week and you pick it up, you're like, is it going to be enough to drive home? If the repairer has the ability to charge the car, and that's part of their checklist of processes when they go to hand the car over, does it have 80% or more battery, then that's again a reassuring thing.
It's one of those other things that attract people to Tesla. So Tesla have their own service centres, and of course they're going to charge your car while it's there. You can see on your app. I remember when I had my Tesla, you'd say, oh, it's charging right now. It's 100%, So those little things add up. Yeah, having those little things there.
It's a comprehensive report. We'll publish it on techguide.com.au and EFTM.com for you to download and have a look at as well as some summaries from us to cover off, and hopefully it gets a little bit of widespread coverage as well. But most importantly, we do genuinely appreciate Julie's time because Australia, New South Wales particularly, has been through
busier
a
than
lot
the Prime Minister right now
in the last week. And you look, if it's 2 weeks ago that you have the floods and the dramas, then it's now that the insurance is the problem. And I was again. She didn't. This was not in the recording because we were just chatting before we got started with the show. But the fact that the NRMA Insurance CEO goes to the flood affected areas and meets with
absolutely people, meets her customers.
That's pretty impressive stuff.
Absolutely,
pretty impressive stuff. All right, we'd love to hear from you. 0477 657 657. Thanks for Vodafone. Give us a text. Send us a text or a WhatsApp. We'd love to hear from you because we love hearing your stories about EVs. We love hearing your love for an EV. We also love hearing that you're thinking about an EV and what your questions are. And
we are here to help.
I think if anyone else wants to produce a report, it should be that Dummy's Guide to Owning an EV, because
which is called the Two Blokes Talking Electric Cars podcast.
I think we should publish something.
I think we should.
I think we should put an ebook out.
Yeah.
Or a book you could buy on Amazon.
That is a good idea.
All right, there's a new idea from the Two Blokes.
Boom.
We're going to author a book and we're going to sell it on Amazon to be printed.
Wow.
Print to deliver. I've always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
But I've never read one, so it seems like a strange thing to do.
I've written a book.
You have written your brother's biography, yeah, that's right.
We've also got an unpublished novel too that I'll tell you about later. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That could be the first book I've ever read.
Maybe.
Okay, it's not about electric cars, so
no, it's not.
Story for another day. Thanks very much for listening, folks. Thanks for downloading, and please share with your friends if they're interested in EVs. This is the way to give them some knowledge, just vicariously. Just send them a little link, and off they go. They learn some more as well.
That's how it works.
We appreciate you joining us, folks, and we'll be back in next week with another episode of Two Blokes Talking Electric Cars.